Roger, go for landing, over.
The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not.
We have been given the scientific knowledge, the technical ability, and the materials to pursue the exploration of the universe.
We are the dreamers, the limit pushers, the explorers, the ones who see things differently. As commercial space exploration evolves, Stellar Access welcomes each partnership, elevating every space enthusiast to reach for the stars and igniting the industry's forward thinkers, desiring to grasp a piece of the universe. We empower our suppliers and providers, backed with over 40 years of solutions, to journey beyond the bounds of Earth, propelling their brand, making space available for you. This is just the beginning. Join us as we bring space to your neighborhood.
Hi everyone, I'm very happy to welcome you to another episode of a webinar, monthly webinar series. My name is Ana Cristina. You might remember my previous webinar or other campaigns from Stellar Access. I'm very happy to have you here. Very excited to have this new episode of our monthly webinar. I think we're having a little audio. Let us see if we can fix it. Can you hear? I think that's better. Okay. Let me see if we can fix it. Okay, I'm gonna speak very just so you don't get confused. Welcome to this episode, this webinar series with most bright stars industry, and to give us insight. Today we have one bright star that is going to about strategic business growth sector, and her name is Anita Renteria, and I'm very happy.
Okay. Yeah, this is not sure what the echo is, but we're gonna have a very long webinar if I have to talk this slowly. So there, that's better. I don't know what happened, but that worked. Okay. Hi, Anna. And thank you very much for that. I've never had an introduction quite like that. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to Stellar for inviting me to speak to strategic growth on this webinar. And it's a first for me. I've done lots of presentations in my day, never quite in this format. So I'm speaking to a little tiny camera on top of my computer monitor, and I can't see any of you. So this is going to be a little awkward. So if you from time to time see me glance to the side to look at my notes, it's because, yeah, I have notes and I'm going to be looking at them. So please bear with me. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you for spending part of your lunchtime with us today to hear this webinar on strategic growth. I hope it will be informative. I hope it'll be fun. I hope you'll only hear my voice one time. and I hope that at the end of it, there'll be something that you've heard of value that will stay with you. So let's see. I think we're ready to go with that, Anna, if that's okay. All righty. So this is the topic, strategic growth, and they invited me to speak on this. And one of the things, my title obviously implies that I know something about strategic growth, but I'm going to approach this conversation in three parts. Part one is, why am I here? Okay, let me rephrase that. Why am I here? when I when I invest my time in a webinar or a podcast or a TED Talk or anything like that, I want to know that what the background is of the speaker and what qualifies them to speak to me about the topic, right? So I'm going to spend some time talking about my background. Yes, I am the Chief Growth Officer of Barrios, and that does imply that I do know about the topic. But there were many years prior to my getting to Barrios, my happy place, I call it, where I spent with large companies, technology companies, large prime contractors, startups, international company, here or there, that informed, and all of that, every one of those customer times with those companies, my customer has been NASA or space related companies. So that has informed the things over the 40 years that I've been in this business that kind of helped me to define for myself what I think strategic growth requires in this industry. And so I'm going to go ahead and William Wordsworth once said, to begin, right? So here we are at the beginning. First thing is my background. So straight out of college, I am a Texas Aggie. I went to a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC. So this was in the mid 80s, again, 40 years. And DEC was, at that time, they were a computer company. And at that time, DEC was the second largest computer company in the world, over 100,000 employees. And so I joined them. Was it my plan to join a hot technology company straight out of college? It was not. Was it my plan to go into sales? It was not. I was going for who was going to make me the best offer, and digital gave me the best offer. My dad was a salesman. He sold tires, and I definitely did not want to be in sales, and I definitely did not want to sell tires. But he told me I should consider sales. He said, you have the personality type that would fit, and you don't have to do it your whole life. But if you can sell, you'll always have a job. So I combined those two things, and I went into the Digital Equipment Corporation. And fortunately for me, the fresh outs were all assigned to different industries, and I landed in the aerospace market. Again, not a plan, but a really lucky stroke. My other colleagues who were fresh outs were getting assigned to oil and gas companies or accounting firms, and I got to go to NASA. So win, win, win. I was really excited about that. So it was really great. We were at the time competing really well with IBM, who was the dominant computer company in the world. And the market was changing. And at that time, DEC didn't really understand or respond to those market changes. Our owner, Ken Olson, was one of the most brilliant people, engineer. He did a fantastic job with the company, and our products were great, but he didn't believe that we needed to advertise. He didn't believe that people wanted computers in their homes. And yeah, obviously that was not the right direction. And so DEC ended up getting sold to, of all things, a PC company, Compaq. And when those changes started happening, we were invited to look for another job in the company or take a package. So I looked for another job in the company and I found one, but it wasn't in space anymore. And so I took the package. So in other parlance, I got laid off. So I took the package and I went to work for Lockheed Martin Space Operations Company. That was one of my customers when I was at DEC. And at the time, Lockheed had won a huge contract, $3.8 billion, called the Consolidated Space Operations Contract. That was at the time the largest contract ever awarded in the history of civilian agencies. So it was a pretty big deal. And what it was designed to do was to manage NASA's entire space operations infrastructure. So you can look at that as outsourcing space ops through one company for all of those centers. And it was a pretty big deal, and it was a very new approach. My job was, are you ready? Commercialization of space. That far back. It was to find users for dormant or underutilized NASA assets, commercial users. And so I joined a really small team and we had a lot of fun going out, and we found commercial companies interested in using some of NASA's assets at the time. One example would be the Merritt Island Launch Annex, MILA. It's a launch site that is right there at KSC, and it was used only when the shuttle was taking off till it cleared just a little bit, just right at the very beginning of the launch, and otherwise it wasn't utilized. And so we found a company interested in launching some of their own satellites and using it. And so we said, okay, we did what you wanted. And here's the thing. At that time, NASA actually wasn't that interested in they weren't quite ready to let go of those assets full time. Okay. So they said, that's great, but we have what they call primacy. We are the priority. So if the shuttle launch slips and it happens to fall on the day you've sold that time to that commercial company, they're not going and we are. So if you paid for that and your business model is counting on that, that's not really the best sales approach, right? So it wasn't a good business model. And so eventually it became so difficult that, I decided that I needed to look elsewhere. And so I left Lockheed Martin and I joined a company called Universal Space Network, USN. USN, much different than the giant DEC and the giant Lockheed Martin, was actually a startup. USN was founded in 1996 by Pete Conrad, one of the original Apollo astronauts. And he founded it with the goal of, are you ready? Providing space services to make them more accessible to users. And he basically understood that there was a lot of great ideas out there, but the cost of investing in getting those ideas off the ground was prohibitive. And so he thought, so he created the concept actually of pay-as-you-go services for this particular company. So yes, again, attempting to commercialize space in a way that hadn't been done before. I was hired because one of the primary customers for USN was CSOC, the CSOC contract, and that pressure that NASA had of not really being ready for that kind of commercialization, as well as other centers not really liking having centralized operations in the hands of one center or one contractor. CSOC was starting to decentralize. And as a result of that, the services that USN sold were no longer going to be bought in Houston. And so I was invited to look around in the company or take the package. So yes, again, second layoff. So things don't always go the way you think. But so I took their package and then I went to work for McDonnell Detweiler Space Robotics Company. Now, this was my first time to work for an international company, although USN was partially funded by the Swedish Space Corporation. So I went to work for MDSRC. It's a wholly owned subsidiary at the time of McDonnell Detweiler Associates, which still exists today, Canadian-based. And they are a manufacturer of the robotic arm that flew on shuttle, the one that flies on station, and some of the other robotics platforms that exist. And that was really interesting and fun work. It was a whole new aspect of NASA, of selling to NASA and providing services to support those robotics. So I learned a lot from that experience. And but it turns out that the model of business development in Canada at that time is very, very different than how we do business development in the United States. It was hard to get them to understand that you don't get an 85% win probability when you bid things in the United States. So, and because there were fewer players and the government tends to invest in Canada in some of those smaller number of players, that's what they were used to. And so that kind of was difficult to do. I had some success in getting us on some teams, but at one point I decided I think I needed to, it was getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated. So we made an appointment to go see a company called Barrios, and met with Sandy Johnson at that time. She's still our CEO. She was CEO and president at that time. And Barrios was considering going after some NASA work. And I was recommending that we try to get on their team. I felt like they had a really good chance of winning. So we went and met with them, and I was so impressed with her and so impressed with the company. Unfortunately, the leadership did not take my recommendation. We went another direction. And so I took some time to think, and then I ended up calling her up and basically knocking on her door saying, hey, I want to come work for you. And so she said, well, I don't really have anything available right now, but if we win this contract, then we can talk. And sure enough, Barrios won. And true to her word, we talked. And I won because she hired me. And so that's been my happy place ever since. And so all of that to say that the commercial space market that we're in now has been developing over many, many years. I sure thought it would come a lot earlier in my career than it has, but it's here now. And so when we talk about strategic growth in our industry, it helps to know who you are and where you want to go in order to have that strategic growth. So that's part one of my conversation today. Part two, I'm going to turn it over to Anna, and we're going to find out part two, which is, why are you here? Anna, over to you, please.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting story, Anita. I love to hear that. I love to hear it. And yeah, we want to know, we're going to launch a poll right now. So please make sure you have your fingers ready to answer it. And we want to know where all of you are coming from, if you're coming from government, NASA, commercial, space, or any other industries. So if you can let us know right now, because it's going to be very useful information for Anita to build up her story and give us her best advice to really learn how to grow business in space and give us her experience. So we're having some answers. Of course, most of the people are coming from space. We want to know if it's, of course, commercial, if it's other industries or government related. So we're having 39 people right now in our call, and we have some. We would love for you, for the ones that are answering that you come from other industries, to let us know through the chat maybe what other industries, and maybe telling us a little bit, why are you interested in space, or just in growing your business, like learning the space experience from Anita to grow your own business. What do you think, Anita, about the responses?
So I can't see them, so I'm a little bit.
Okay, so we have 86%, around 20 people coming from space, and they answered 4%. One person answered commercial space, but I'm guessing there's a little bit more from those 20 coming from space that are from commercial too. And we have two answers that they say they come from other industries. So we really want to know which industries. We have Liam here saying that he comes from space, Liam Kennedy, but he should have answered commercial. And he says, maybe I should have said commercial, but as we already have our own satellite and just arrived with a 4K camera payload to the ISS,
nice.
We are definitely a crossover.
Congratulations, Liam. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, see, I expected that it would be a diverse audience. You know, Barrios is known as a traditional government services contractor, so I expected, you know, obviously a lot of people who know us would be from that side. But there's also the commercial space. You know, this is coming through Stellar Access, and as a pure commercial play, like you saw in the video at the beginning. Stellar is bringing in non-traditional users and hopefully customers, and matching them with space commercial space providers, which is of course creating and driving demand for that low Earth economy. So it is exactly the kind of blend that Liam talked about, that where you're doing space things, but you're looking for a commercial market. And so given that, I expected there to be some non-traditional folks and some commercial space people on board, and also people who are, careerists, right? Early career, mid-career, late career, looking for a change, just interested in finding out more about strategic growth in the industry in general. So that's what I was looking for, and it'll help me to vector the conversation that comes next about what is strategic growth into the interests of the folks that are actually listening, because you definitely want it to be of interest, right? So maybe you've got any questions at this point yet, Anna?
We just have another comment from Pilar, who is saying that she comes from academic medical background, Pilar Archila. And we also have Roger, and he says, was PTC and USN looking to make? Here's a question: was PTC and USN looking to make space access available primarily to industry for high cost, high level usage, or was there an interest in markets similar to what Stellar is now going after? What was the success rate for those markets?
Okay, so great question. So what Universal Space and USN did was to develop 13-meter antennas that we had around the world. We called it PrioriNet, and that was part of we had VC investment. The company was very small. I think we were only, at the time I left, maybe 20 million in revenue versus those big companies. But we had a network of satellites that could track C-band and S-band satellites. And instead of having to build your own tracking to monitor and get your data down, or send your telemetry down, or commands up, we would sell you that service. We could take passes equatorially, we could do polar orbits, and we could sell you basically the passes. We had control centers and network operation centers in 3 different places, California, Pennsylvania, and I think there was one more. Oh, yes, and let's see, Sweden. And so Swedish Space Corporation was a part investor in USN, and today USN is no longer an entity in that name. It is now wholly owned by the Swedish Space Corporation. And so we would sell passes, essentially. We had operators who would take the data down or send commands up for customers who didn't want to make the investment in putting their own, and have to put up their own antennas. And so that was the business model. Primary customer was, of course, NASA, but they've done a lot of things internationally since then. It was a fun company to work for. I enjoyed it.
Great. He says, interesting, quite the niche. Thanks, Anita. That's what Roger says. And I think we can move on to part 2. We know now that we primarily have people from space, commercial,
yep,
and a little bit of people from other industries.
Okay, well then let's go ahead and move on to part 3 then, and we'll talk about what is strategic growth. So here's what I've learned. I can't see the charts on. Oh, I can get the poll. There, it was me. I couldn't see it. Sorry. So the first thing I want to say about strategic growth is it is non-linear, right? It's lovely to have this growth chart that goes like that, and you grow, and then you grow, and then you grow, and then you grow, and then you grow. And those of you who are from traditional space companies, especially the publicly owned ones, know that is the expectation, right? You got to keep growing. But growth is not linear at all. And so the main thing to know is, and I think it should be obvious, it's one of those things that's so hard to grasp, though, change happens. And one example would be the Digital Equipment Corporation example that I talked about. Second largest company in the world, but couldn't see that the market was changing until it was too late. The market is going to change under you. Sometimes you can see it coming, like programs come to an end. Sometimes you should have seen it coming, like commercial space. This has been happening for a long time, and now it's actually getting legs. Now, it's taken a while, but it is coming. So we should be anticipating how that's going to affect us. And then sometimes you absolutely have no idea it's coming, like COVID-19, right? Who could have seen that? Huge industries, commercial real estate, hospitality, hotels, all kinds of services, makeup. Put it on makeup today. That got decimated because nobody had to wear makeup anymore, necessarily. And so it changes everything, and no one could have predicted that. So bottom line is, you can lose a contract, budgets can be slashed or cut, industries get disrupted. How are you prepared for that change? That's part of that. Strategic growth is definitely nonlinear, and you have to be prepared for the change. Next. The next point is I have five different elements, basically. That's element one. Element two. This is really important. Strategic growth is identifying your value and committing to it. So what does that mean? So here's change coming at you. You're not expecting it, or you are, it doesn't matter. You're gonna need to pivot, right? In order to pivot, you have to have 1 foot planted. That's how a pivot works, right? So plant that foot in the value that you as a company have. Here's an example from my past also, McDonnell Douglas, right? They have stayed true to their core value, their core competency of space robotics. They went through a lot of changes. Before I joined them, they had just bought it back from Orbital Sciences. They had been owned partially by Orbital Sciences. Then they were sold to Loral, and they became Maxar. So they did a lot of changes, and some of it, I think you have to, at this point, they're still doing robotics at a very high level for NASA, going strong, and are still in the game. They obviously learned a lot more about the U.S. market to get there, but they had to pivot, and they stayed true to what their core value was, which is space robotics, and remain at the top of that game. It's very tempting from a business development standpoint, especially if you're a small business and you just really want to get work. It's very tempting to go into a large customer, NASA, or another prime contractor, and tell them that you can do, I'll do whatever you need. I have a company, we're hungry, we're ready to go, we'll do whatever you need. We can do everything. We have 5 guys with 10 years experience, so we have 50 years experience doing engineering or whatever it might be. Whatever you need, I'll get. It's very tempting to do that because you really mean it, and you're very bought in to trying to get that work. But it's not going to add value, right? There's just no value in that. You have to articulate. You have to, first of all, understand what that customer needs, what the problem set is that they're facing, and then how you fit that. Because if you don't, then it's like an interview. You don't just go in and go, hey, I'm going to be good at everything. Put me in. I'm ready to go. You have got to define where your value is to them. And for that, again, you need to know what that value is. Now, for very small companies, if you have to take work that maybe isn't ideally what the thing you want to do because you got to pay people, well, you got to do what you got to do. That happens. But understand that there's a risk to that because it consumes your time, it consumes your resources and your talent, and the talent, that you have in your company, away from the area that you really want to grow into. What I've learned in my career, for at least for us, is trying to bid on everything has a lower win probability than being smart about what you can go after. Now you have to be in a position to be able to afford to do that. That's part of it, and you get there. But you're going to burn energy and resources either way. So at least make it count for you. And if you have to take work that is work that you're, it's going to pay the bills, not exactly where your heart is, that's, you got to do what you got to do. But have a transition plan or an exit strategy of some kind that allows you to keep some focus on the right thing for you. And maybe that'll include validating whether what you thought was the right thing is the right thing. But those are the kinds of things you gotta figure out who you are and who you want to be, and stick with it as best you can. The third aspect, I think, that's really key in my experience around strategic growth is leadership focus. So ownership has to have a clear vision and has to be able to communicate it to where the entire team understands that vision. They know what it is. And you have to take action to support that vision. If you have a vision, but you haven't really communicated it to your team, you're not leading, you're just taking a walk. If you communicate it really well and they get it, but you don't take any action behind it, they may not believe it. They're not seeing that you're actually taking accountability for that vision. And if you take action and you show that accountability, then everybody understands how to get there, that it's real, and it ignites passion. Passion fuels everything. And that's something that's really important. I've been very lucky with Barrios, especially, to have leadership with vision and focus. Sandy Johnson, our CEO, and her years of running the company, and now with Kelly, our president, who has a vision that includes commercial space. And how do we maximize our core? We know who we are. We are absolutely a space company, and our leadership vision is getting ourselves leveraging the good things that we do and have done for 43 years in space, and matching that to the opening of opportunities and positioning the company to be able to do that. So that's a really key part of strategic growth. Let's see. The next thing, I think, excuse me, I'm going to take a little water. Okay. And the next thing I think that's important for strategic growth in this industry is investing in the fundamentals that will keep you on, I'm tempted to say on useful island. That is a shameful vector into me telling y'all that I just got back from Antarctica, which was super cool. But there was a little island that we visited. It was called Useful Island. And it was called that because in the old days of whaling, this is a terrible story, that island was very helpful to the whalers because they could climb at the top of it very easily and see where the whales were. And right next to it was a little tiny island that was blocked by a useful island, and you couldn't really see anything from there. And that one was called Useless Island. So I don't know, I thought it was funny. But invest in the fundamentals of your business that will keep you on useful island. You're going to need to have the resources. When you see that opportunity, you're going to have the resources that are going to help you face those challenges. So how do you do that? Well, from my perspective, it's obviously going to be biased. It's business development. That's going to be one of the key ones. Henry Ford said, nothing happens until somebody sells something. And that is 100% true, obviously. So get that talent working for you. And when you do, it's very tempting again to take somebody and assign them into business development and then send them on their way to go conquer the world. Business development is a profession. It requires certain skills, and it definitely has processes that you need to follow. And so make sure that the person that you're assigning to is able to learn and has a facility towards that type of stuff, or that actually has experience winning. That's the kind of thing that you need to do. You know, it's some people have the impression that business development is schmoozing. That's what we do for a living. We schmooze. And there's a funny story when Kelly was doing her rotation through some of the corporate functions before she ascended to the presidency of the company. She worked for business development. And after about, I don't know, 9 months or something in the job where we were busy, I told her that, you know, people always think that business development is just schmoozing. And her question to me was, when do we get to the schmoozing? Because all we're doing is working. So it's a lot of work, and having the talent to do that is going to be a core element to being sure that you can pivot into new growth. There's other areas, obviously. That just happens to be the one that I know the best. Infrastructure. You know, do you have the accounting system? Are you, you know, timesheet systems, things like that? If you can't be fluid in getting the interactions with your customers done on the accounting side, on the people side, you know, that you're going to have trouble, and you're going to spend a lot of time and energy where you could be trying to grow. Things like operations. Do you have the right person running the contract? Do you have people who understand how that contract is working and should work, and manage people? HR, staffing. I think all of us are understanding these days that there are some staffing issues, challenges in staffing, because we're all competing for the same kinds of talent. So being able to keep that talent is critical. You know, the other side of that is, back in the day, Jim Collins' book Good to Great, he said, get the right people on the bus and get the wrong people off the bus. And that's harder, but it ends up being better for both sides. So make sure that you have the resources that you need that will help you pivot. You need a core team with you if you're gonna grow, and they need to be able to grow with you. So that's another part. And then the last thing I think that's a key element is listen to the voice of the customer. It is, you know, your frontline, the folks who are talking to the customer, business development people, and the people that are supporting that customer, whatever that customer is, commercial, it doesn't matter. Whoever that customer is, the people who are interfacing with them on a day-to-day basis are the ones who are hearing what's going on. They're seeing where the customer is worrying, where the customer is doing great, where they have needs that you might be able to fill. You know, they are telling you what's trending, what's blending, and what's ending. They're hearing all of that. Make sure that you get that feedback from them and do something with it, right? What's trending? Well, commercial space is trending. Low Earth orbit, lunar, commercial space is trending. Now, it's been trending for some time, but it's really trending now. So that's something. How do you get prepared for that? Where can you fit in that? Start listening to the folks who are hearing it from the customers. Blending. An example of that would be in the space world, the XEVAS contract. That was a FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation based solicitation, which means they get to tell you everything that you need to do, very prescriptive about how you can provide this particular product or service. But the commercial space companies who won, Collins Aerospace and Axiom, own the suit. That's very different. That didn't happen with the shuttle. They did not. The builder of the shuttle did not own the shuttle. So it's a blend of both government services and commercial space in a new way. And so it takes a new way of thinking about business. So how are you going to fit in that? And that's something we spend a lot of time thinking about and have been expecting for some time and are participating in very heavily. What's ending, of course, they'll tell you what, you know, the obvious example right now is ISS is reaching into life. There are a lot of companies, including Barrios, who have tons of business with ISS. So how are we getting ready for that end of life situation to happen. Well, I can tell you, we're spending a lot of time focusing on that so we can adapt to that. And we're listening to the customer. Nothing else I've said matters if you don't listen to the customer. So, so I guess, yeah, that's it. So to recap, you want to give me my my recap chart up, please? Sorry. Thank you. Strategic growth is nonlinear. It's already changing. It's already changing. So how are you prepared to grow with it? Identify your value, plant that foot, and commit to it. Focused leadership. Cannot underscore enough how important it is that the leadership voices it, communicates it, communicates it, and backs it. Investing in the fundamentals, of course, at whatever level you are, you can do that. You just find a way to do it, even if it's just you. How do you spend your time? It better not be on QuickBooks all the time, or you're not going to go anywhere. And then listen, always listen. Nothing else matters if you don't listen. So I think that's pretty much the comments that I had for today. So go ahead on and hit me with questions if you got them.
That's amazing, Anita. Thank you so much. This was very, I don't know, it has everything for everyone interested in this business to really know where to start and how to advance in this industry. I'm gonna ask a question myself while we wait for some other questions. We have some very nice comments that I'm gonna read to you in a moment.
Okay, thanks.
What do you see is the biggest difference between Space then, when you were working for the other companies, and Space now in terms of growth, of paths of growth? I mean.
Oh, yeah, good question. I would say speed and diversity. Things are changing so much more quickly, and a lot of that has to do, of course, with the fact that the way we work, the way we've adapted how we work, and the access to. When I was selling Digital Equipment Corporation computers for hundreds of $1,000s, they didn't have this much computing power. My iPhone 15, right? So the technology has allowed the pace to increase, the tools, and the way that people are adapting to those tools, that has really increased the pace of growth, I think. Another thing is, let's see, what else? I get wrapped around technology sometimes. But the options available, right? The government has done a really good job of making things easier. For example, for small businesses, because Barrios is a small business, you can have something called joint ventures, right? Joint ventures have always been a thing, but now you can have joint ventures where the small business gets to learn from a mentor large business, and then they create this joint venture. And if you have to apply, you have to get approved by the Small Business Administration. There's lots of factors involved, but that can count as a small business, which gives you a bit of edge in being able to establish your small business to go after work for the government. Things like that. We have a lot of different options now. There's choices where, and Barrios has done this in the past, is if you're partnering with a commercial company, you might actually do some investment yourself. Like, we'll give you certain amount of hours for, we'll do it at our cost to help this thing get going, because it's that important to us to be part of that new wave of industry. So I think there's a lot of different options and a lot of different ways to connect that are important. And then remote work, that the growth for the individual employee has, there's so many more options than there used to be before COVID. So, yeah.
Well, I was looking for differences, but these are great hacks, Anita. I mean, you should make a list of hacks, because that's really useful, I think. Okay, I'm going to read some of the comments. Liam, he says he's getting so much from this presentation, and he's thanking you very much. Then we have Carrie Knotts, who says, Anita, you are the best at listening. I learned so much from my time working with you, but can always improve here. So that's another comment. Then we have another comment from Liam. He says, I pretend to myself that I am not doing BD, but really all the work comes from that. I call it being passionate about what I am passionate about and sharing that in a way that resonates with whoever I am with whoever I am with at the moment. That requires listening for what's important over there and where the connect is to make it a win-win.
Yep.
And then we have another comment from Roger who says, there's a line in film Moneyball cited by Brad Pitt's character as general manager of a baseball team that reminds me of what you're discussing, and it says adapt or die. Makes sense based on your experience and observations. Pilar Archila says, where do you project Barrios will be in 5 years? That's a good question.
Wow, that's a great question. So I will tell you that Barrios has a strategic plan for where we want to be in 5 years. And we spent, in fact, just time yesterday taking a look at what the steps are that we need to do from internally for our infrastructure, for our employees, and for our growth and how we implement it. So I can't, they would frown on me giving away the total secret sauce, but we definitely plan to be. And Carrie Knotts, thanks for the comment, Carrie, is going to be key to that. This is one of the investment and resources that Barrios has made towards growth, right? We have stood up a commercial space division, and Carrie is the vice president of that commercial space division. And so we're doing they get tired of me saying this, but I think I watched too much Our Planet, but the great migration of our incredibly talented and experienced workforce into the growing commercial market. So not only are we resisting it or trying to stick our heads in the sand, we're definitely not doing that. What we're trying to do is to help push it along, not just be part of it. We really want to help the customer to do what they need to do, which is NASA's looking to spend a little bit more time focusing on some of the programs that are going to go to the moon, that are going to go to Mars. And so we want to participate in all of that, and we're positioning ourselves to do that. In 5 years, I think you'll see that we've made even more headway than we are making right now. And I also want to make a plug. If you want to come back to this webinar in a month, I think they're going to give you a QR code in a minute, and Carrie Knotts will be the speaker for that. So you'll learn a lot more about that. Can I also talk to Liam for a second? There was something he said about being in business development and not wanting to think of myself in business development. Nobody really wants to think of themselves as a salesperson. If sales has a terrible reputation, I guess, image in people's minds. But honestly, every single person in your company is business development. If you talk to a customer, how you present yourself, how you talk about your company, how you do your job, all of that reflects on your company. And if you have the kind of reputation that Barrios has built well before I got here and continues to do, it is that we are going to do a great job. It helps to sell. I tell people it's good to be Barrios, because the reputation Barrios has helps me so much in the role that I have. So yeah, nicely done, Liam.
And he also comments, my wife is the author of Business Development for Dummies, and that's a true story.
Maybe I should read it. I'm going to go back and read that, make sure I know what I'm doing.
Then Sergio is asking, for companies that are not in space but want to get into space, more specifically commercial space, what is your advice to make those business-to-business connections to start building their space business portfolios?
That's a great question. Well, my number one advice would be contact Stellar Access immediately. But no, you have to challenge the way you look at same kind of thing. What's my core and what's the value that I can get from having something, having a space presence. Maybe it's that you fly something up there as that you make as a product and you fly it up there and it comes back and now it's been in space. There is a very, very strong panache, very strong brand identification with NASA and anything having to do with space. People love space. I mean, like I said from the beginning, when I was, I'm glad I wasn't in an accounting firm or an oil and gas firm, because I would not have lasted at that company very long. And it's very exciting. Who doesn't get excited by a rocket launch or any of that kind of thing? So how can you take that brand awareness, that excitement, and maximize your service or product through that? You can also do things in space that you can't do on Earth. There's lots of research, lots of one experiment Barrios flew, protein crystal growth experiment that we flew on SpaceX 14 several years ago, was because crystals without the pressure of gravity can grow into perfect forms. They can be much purer and much more. Because gravity actually can compress them, and so they become more effective, and they help so much in medical research. Somebody was from medical and from academia. That is a phenomenal advantage to have, and there's only one place to get it, and it has to be in microgravity. So what are the types of things that you might be able to do? One fun one that I saw at the International Astronautical Congress a couple of years ago was champagne in space. How do the bubbles behave? How is it different there? And what it was, there's so many things that you can think about. And speaking to a company like Stellar or people who are at other companies who might have done it, can help inform you on what are the advantages you can take and how can you get there, and the platform to connect with those companies is also at hand with Stellar. So I know that was a big commercial, wasn't it? But honestly, that's a great way to get started.
Awesome. Then we have a question from Eric Lopez, and he wants to know, as someone aspiring to grow in their career, could you share some insights into how you leverage your business development expertise to help shape the company's strategic focus?
Okay. So that's a good question. I was lucky because one of the things that I learned, especially with Barrios, not so much in the earlier companies. Oftentimes in the earlier companies, I felt that they hired me for what I knew, that I understood the NASA customer, and I knew how to work there, but they didn't listen to me. So it was kind of frustrating to get hired for something, tell them what you know, and then they just don't listen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen at Barrios. So Sandy actually really likes to do that kind of business development up and out and outward facing kind of stuff. And so it was kind of fun when we used to go do calls on NASA or other big companies, because I would walk in and say, thank you for giving us the meeting. This is Sandy Johnson, our CEO. And then I just let her do this and then let her do all the work. So she was very, very forward leaning and doing that. And Kelly, of course, as I'd mentioned before, did a couple of years doing business development and capture quite successfully. And so I don't really have to push much in Barrios for that kind of vision. If I wasn't in that vision, if I was in another company, maybe one of the companies I worked for in the past or a different one, it would have to be among part of what I talked about already. Does the leadership have the vision to invest in the resources that know how to speak and listen to the customer? Because that thread has to be there in order to be able to kind of push the strategy towards growth. So I think I would say, keeping that in mind as you approach management, as you contribute, making the case for why your ideas about growth, should be listened to. I think that those are the kinds of things. The other part you can do is, if you can partner with another company that is already ahead of the game or that needs something that you have, partnerships are another really good way to try to advance growth going forward. So any of those, and Eric, it's really good to hear from you. I'm glad to have the question.
Awesome advice, Anita. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another couple of comments from Roger. He says, good example, Anita, myriad more via, and he's posting some ISS benefits for humanity site. And then Liam is also commenting. He says, my getting into commercial space hack is to attend the ISS R&D conferences. So many examples of folks who have done that are represented, and that is why I now have a payload on the ISS.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Congratulations. Yeah,
So
that's a great conference. We definitely go to that one as much as possible. In fact, much of our company supports the ISS research organization, and so we typically have a big presence from supporting NASA, but then also on the business development side and the executive side, we have a lot of. It's a fascinating conference to attend. Good for you.
Yeah, it's always great to get connected with everyone in the
Absolutely.
ecosystem, and that's why we're here too. That's why Stellar Access is here. We're trying to take this conference experience and take it to some other spheres, like digital spheres, so you can join our community of Stellar Access, and we can hook you up with whoever you're looking for in the space sector.
There you go.
I think if anyone has any other comments, we are more than happy to take them to Anita. Otherwise, thank you very much, Anita. This has been really, really, really good. I mean, I've enjoyed it a lot. And as I was saying, we invite everyone in this webinar to join us, to join the Stellar Access community. Please scan the QR code so you can receive our newsletter and all the opportunities that we are creating to grow and strengthen this beautiful space community, and to bring more people from different sectors into the space, into the commercial space sector. And of course, bringing you this webinar series with the most bright stars from the industry who are going to shed some light into some of us to grow in this career in space. Thank you very much, Anita.
Thank you, and thanks, Stellar. And don't forget, next month, listen in for Carrie Knotts. It's going to be great. Talk to you later. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.